Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan McGuire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
I was in tears. I was like, that's the best, man.
Welcome back to Who the Wild Things Are. My name is Ryan McGuire, and I'm here to bring you conversations with the most wild folks on the planet. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Let's get it going. Well, Sam, we're live. Thanks for joining. And I'm really stoked to talk to you today about both your product and also kind of the background that led us to this point. It seems like you are an individual that's super dialed and focused right now, and it's been cool to kind of watch you go through this journey of building something that's really special to you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and to share it all with you and also ask you some questions too.
Sweet. So you're the CEO of Oslo. Am I saying it right?
You are.
All right.
Wonderful.
All right. But before we get into the drink, I want to kind of talk about what led you to this point, led you to this community and this kind of lifestyle. What was the genesis for kind of this shift for you?
Yeah, man, it's been a evolution over a lot of years, and my background kind of grew up in suburbs of Chicago, upper middle class upbringing, and went to state school, studied finance, kind of had a pretty stereotypical, like, get right into the corporate game, start to my career. And that was the first time that I felt the effects of being really unaligned in life. And I was, pretty much for the first, 22 to 26, I was very on again, off again with like fitness and personal development and everything. And it was literally like at a happy hour. I was working at a software company, and it was pretty, growing up in Chicago suburbs, drinking is a very kind of like central piece of culture, just friendships and everything. And I had a friend tell me that they were not drinking or drinking less. And when they were drinking, it was like this tequila soda type of a thing. It was the first person I ever heard that had this mindful drinking philosophy, at least until that point. And that was kind of like an aha moment for me of whatever I have been doing, I don't necessarily need to continue doing that for the ongoing basis. But that was kind of the initial pivot away from what I would say would be a pretty stereotypical kind of 9 to 5 happy hour, drink on the weekends type of a lifestyle to more of a, I want to become the best version of me possible, which, goes much deeper than just what I'm drinking and drinking alcohol in general, but to every other piece.
Was there like a turning point moment with you personally? Like, did you ever develop a drinking problem, or was it more you just saw that you weren't meeting your full potential?
Yeah, it was. So I'm not somebody who I think has that like, chemical addictive trait. So I've never had an inability to stop drinking or a problem in that sense. But more so, I just saw who I became when I was living that way. And like, it was much more for me a mental health type of a deal. And so I'm somebody who's, struggled with anxiety, bouts of depression off and on. And I had no idea how closely those were tied when I was younger, but in the moments where, times where I was in the darkest place personally and mentally was also the times that I was, shocker, not working out very consistently and drinking heavily on the weekends, and kind of in this cycle that that was kind of like recognizing that pattern that I had was my personal aha moment of like, I want to change and I want to be different personally. And then going down this path that I had an idea for a drink, and that's what it ended up being. But it was more just me trying to become a better version of me.
Well, I'm glad that you never like got blacked out, crashed your mom's car and got arrested. But it is very cool that you were able to associate kind of like the anxiety the mental health part to the negative lifestyle choices, because I think sometimes those are more subtle and it's a little bit harder to see it, especially when everyone in your community is kind of doing the same thing.
It was, it was difficult. I mean, a lot of my friends from childhood and in college even, and, you know, like I'm very close with my family, but most of my family, like I'm the only one of my 4 siblings and parents that has gone months without consuming an alcoholic drink. And none of them, I would say, necessarily have a problem at all, but it's just kind of a part of the Midwestern charm.
For sure.
So it was, I was definitely, I've been seen as a little bit of an outsider from time to time. And I think that a lot of my ability to get to this point has been getting comfortable with that. And also just, you know, being somebody who it was more than just anxiety. It was like just being in a really dark place and getting to the point where it's like, I just don't even care if this is weird. Like, I just need to fix whatever's going on up here. And I think these are the components that will have the biggest impact.
Gotcha. And where do you stand now with all that? Do you drink from time to time still, or is it like completely out?
It's, I'd say, like reduced as much as it can. I'm not somebody who's like never touching alcohol. But I'd say like maybe once a month now, which, you know, even as recent as a couple years ago, that was definitely on the weekends and you know, maybe even a day or two during the week, just as a part of like socially. But I've really moved more into trying to just feel good as much as I can every day.
Yeah. And I feel like that is kind of a paradigm shift. I don't know, at least in our communities, but definitely I feel like wider in America is like people kind of not even necessarily becoming sober, but just being a lot more careful about their approach with alcohol. And I think like online, things can't have nuance if you want them to sell. It's like you either have to be the guy that doesn't drink or the guy that drinks super hard, or you have to be like the right wing or you have to be the left wing. It's like you can't make any pitch that has nuance because like it can't be captured in 30 seconds. So it's cool that you kind of leave that space there where it's like, you know, it can be a little bit more of a nuanced approach. I
mean, and that's pretty intentional by me, and you know, we're still pretty early, so we'll see if there is a if the non-polar end has some space. But I'm kind of in the way that I've been discussing, and we're kind of in this evolution as a brand and our positioning and everything, but the angle that I want to take is like removing the stigma from not drinking.
Yeah.
But that's also goes both ways, right? And I feel like so much of it right now is like, I don't want to be judged for my choices. Mm-hmm. And the solution to that is judging everybody else for theirs. Sure. And I just think that's, what are we doing? You know? And we updated the packaging and everything. We're kind of blending into more of this. Like this could be mistaken for a hard seltzer, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So you as somebody who's not drinking, you're at a concert venue, you're able to you don't stick out. But I also don't want you to feel better than somebody else who is choosing to enjoy an alcoholic drink.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, like I said, we'll see if the nuance has space, but I that's my personal belief, and that's kind of the lifestyle that I live, where if I'm at a wedding and I'm celebrating someone I love and I want to have a glass of wine with them, you know, like I think there's moments for that to occur. But it's just something I don't want it to be as consistent as it was in the past.
And I see it all the time, even from people that like I respect. And it happens a lot with alcohol. Like Rich Roll is a great example, who's like, you know, was a big boozer, now very against booze and says that it can add nothing to your life. And it's like, no, it can add nothing to your life, like you personally. Me, like a great example, we were just in France, and like the group I was with is not a drinking group, but yeah, we got red wine at dinner, and it was like on top of this castle overlooking like the French Riviera. It was baller. Like it was awesome. Like I'm getting a glass of wine there 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. And I mean, and what I tell like my friends and stuff when they ask me if I'm drinking, because, you know, I own a non-alcoholic beverage brand, right? This is a topic that comes up often. And I think that there's an intimacy that sharing a glass of red wine or a cocktail with someone that can't be replicated just right now. Like, I don't even think my beverage is amazing, and I have some amazing moments with it. I think a lot of our customers do, but an old fashioned with, you know, my buddy I've known since I was 4 years old, like that's just like a really intimate connecting moment that I'm going to choose to have that beverage with them. But I think it's just being able to realize that that's not my everyday.
Yeah.
And you know, and if it is, like, again, no judgment, as long as what your choices are, they're going to impact you. If they impact me, then we'll have a conversation, but I don't need to project that onto you.
Yeah, and I think these are the important discussions, and it's not just alcohol. It could be any substance. Like kava is super hot right now.
Totally.
Or cannabis or alcohol or whatever they are. They're all going to uniquely affect the situation. And to say there's nothing good that can come out of any substance, I don't know, it kind of throws me off sometimes.
I'm with you. And I actually, like, I see this a ton with, like, diets. Right?
So much.
And like, we're all individual humans that have our own genetic makeup, and like, we react to different things differently. But if my diet works for me, I need to tell you that you have to do this diet, because this is, and it's like your whole identity is wrapped up into whatever I'm choosing to consume. And yeah, just I see it everywhere. And I think the judgment is really what I would love to see extinguished as more than anything.
Yeah, and it's tough because so much of our communicating now is via like these little pieces of glass that are 30-second bits. So there is no time for a discussion like this, which is why podcasting is the best. And you're a podcast host yourself. It's like you can actually be like, well, let's like dive into that, double click for a minute, and like actually expand on what we mean by alcohol is making you fall short of your best self.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're a piece of shit because you have a drink. It means that if you do it frequently and constantly without thought or intention, you could be leaving something on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's an intentionality behind it. And if you're like that moment you had in France with, you know, a glass of red wine, like that was such an intentional moment that who cares that your recovery that night on your Whoop was not 100, like it was 75, and like that's okay.
That's okay.
Because you'll be able to get past that. And like you said, just as long as that's not, you know, like cascading into something much worse beyond that.
Yeah, I wonder about the alcohol thing because for me, it makes me a worse athlete. It does not help me. But I've actually heard some athletes, there's two that come to mind. One of them is Ilia Topuria, who just became a UFC champion.
Yeah.
And he said he drinks wine the week of the fight, and it makes him relax and chill out. And I'm like, well, if that works for you, then like that's your reality. And like, who's to say that his like sleep score is worse? And like, but like if he's relaxing and he's not as anxious, like maybe there's something to that.
Well, and also like, you know, you're leading up to a big fight, you're anxious already, and maybe your sleep's terrible.
Yeah,
so like even he's
anyway.
sleeping like he would sleep worse without it. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest unlocks that I've had is like this game is all trying to figure out me, and I will take tools and ideas from other people that's working for them. But if it's not working for me, then throw it to the side.
Sure.
But you know, being willing to try different things, and similarly, like, you know, I complete, like, there's no way that I would drink alcohol during the week right now because I wake up at 4:30 in the morning so I can go work out with your sister and try to keep up with her. And like, I know that if I have a beer or two, like I'm gonna be dying.
She's gonna be talking shit too. Like, why are you slowing down, Sam?
Yeah,
Let's go.
She already does. That's a regular occurrence. But I just know for me, like I will be very upset with myself because I know how it's gonna impact my next day.
Yeah.
But if somebody else is not, you know, if it doesn't impact them as much, then do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I want to dive in a little bit on this journey you've been on, because I see you getting up at 4 a.m. all the time and writing in your journal. How did that whole, you know, series of events start?
It's so the aha moment that I mentioned earlier, kind of about like, you know, my awakening to wanting to be more mindful about consumption, my drinking habits and everything. That was like a little over 6 years ago. And, you know, it took me about 3 more years to really take that more seriously, right? Like it's just kind of like an ever evolving realization of what I want to keep, what I want to change. But 3 years ago is when I moved from Chicago to Denver to end up launching Oslo. So that was kind of like a huge leap moment for me to, go from selling software to entrepreneur.
Real quick, so did you move as part of that? Like that, so that was all, the move was fully related to launching the drink. Gotcha.
Completely.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So I in 6 years ago when the idea came to me, I was living in San Francisco. And then about a year later, I was like, okay, I can't stop thinking about this idea and wanting to make this drink company happen. So instead of paying San Francisco rent and being distracted, I'm going to go move home to my Chicago suburb, save some money with living with my parents for a little bit of time, lock into this, and take it a little bit more seriously. That didn't exactly happen that way, but that was the thought process. And then I was in Chicago, end up moving from the suburbs into the city, living with some more friends. One of the things that was happening was like I noticed myself falling back to some of my habits, like this grandiose idea of I was going to be locked in, saving all this money. It was like not happening at all. I was traveling more than I was before, and I was still drinking and whatnot. So it was pandemic hits. So this is like 2020, pandemic hits, and that was kind of like many people, it was kind of like a wake up moment where I'm sitting at home and doing not a whole lot. And it was coincidentally I read Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Great book. It's on the shelf back there somewhere.
So I'm, David Goggins, very remarkable dude. Like, a lot going on.
A lot going on.
I can't say I follow everything he says, but I remember I read it at a time where I was sitting here, I was working in software, I had this drink idea, and I had some real estate ambitions as well. And I remember I would just be sitting at home because we couldn't go anywhere and thinking about what's the right path and what should I do? What's the best thing for me to do? And I read Can't Hurt Me, and I read everything that this man was doing. I'm like, there's no reason why I can't do all of this. Why am I making it up? Why do I have to sit here and project what's going to happen and pick the right decision? Just try all of it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to naturally figure itself out. So I started, waking up at 5 a.m. and running every day and just trying to get myself into the Goggins mode as much as possible. But through that, it became really clear that this is what was jumping out at me. I needed to at least scratch this itch, see what was going to happen with this drink company. And I could always go back to software, real estate. It's been around forever. It's not going anywhere. So I might as well go try this thing that seems a little bit more fleeting than everything else. And when I did that, I looked at my surroundings and I was like, okay, I know that where I am right now, I've lived in Chicago 2 separate windows. Both times have probably been my most unhealthy, consistent behavior. I can't become who I think I need to become to run this business here. So where's that going to happen? And I started looking at a bunch of different places. Like I said, I lived in San Francisco before. That wasn't at California. I don't think was where I needed to be. And Denver is a place that I grew up snowboarding and skiing and snowboarding. Would come out here periodically. I've always had friends that lived in Denver, and was like, why not see what that's going to be? So it was November 2020. I ended up coming out here for a week, stay with some friends. Serendipitously, 2 of my friends decided to get married at a courthouse that week when I was staying with them. So we have this huge celebratory thing. All of our friends are around. I haven't seen a bunch of people in a while because, peak pandemic. So I'm like, something's happening here. There's energetically, and all the conversations I was having were really positive. And I was like, I love where your head's at. Why not just see what happens? So that moment I was like, yep, no, February 2021, we're going to move to Denver and I'm going to launch this business. And it was May 19th, 2018 that I came up with the idea. So I was like, why not make it pretty and neat? And May 19th, 2021 is when we'll turn the Shopify store on. So that was kind of the getting out to Denver that started, the evolution that would become Oslo.
And when you say you had this idea, how would you describe the idea on May 19th, 2018?
Yeah.
And how has the idea changed to May 19th, 2024?
A lot. And I think anyone who has, created anything whatever it started as is never what it becomes. But for me, and I really like harp on that awakening to mindful drinking, because that's what it was. And the form that it took right then was drinking a tequila soda instead of a whiskey ginger or a beer. And through the intentionality that like tequila is the, quote unquote, easiest alcohol for your body to digest. Soda water doesn't have sugar, so you have less of a hangover. And it was just kind of this, the choice to drink a tequila soda had some intentionality behind it, whereas before that moment, I had none in terms of what I was drinking. So the initial idea, I was just like, I don't know what this is, but like there's something here. And I thought my initial idea was a tequila soda drink, like canned cocktail. This is before the days of like High Noon, and there was no real like true alcohol-based canned cocktail. White Claw Truly had just come on the scene, all that type of stuff. So I was like, I think there's going to be something here. And so that was actually the initial idea. Started exploring it, realized how horrific it is to start an alcohol company, right?
Really rough.
Just really takes so much money and so many legal things that you have to go through. So I just was like, next, don't need that. What can I do? And I was like, okay, what if I made a really delicious and like nourishing mixer that would pair with it? And it's like, it would take this idea of a tequila soda up a notch. Like it'd be like, I'm not just drinking this because it's not super bad for me, but like maybe it could even be, a component of it would be good. So that was what the idea I had that I moved to Denver with. And actually that's what I launched, was like this Better For You margarita mix was the initial product. And how we get to here we are today, which is like a non-alcoholic seltzer, right, is the first place that we were really selling was at farmers markets. And I would set up my booth, have these people, and the way that we make our product is just basically a brewed herbal tea. So I use dried mint leaves. It's really just like fresh and herbaceous. So I'm hot summer day in Denver, I'm giving people samples of these things. People are loving it because they're dehydrated, and but we're having a lot of success. And with farmers markets, what's amazing and why I encourage anyone who's coming out with a product to do something like a farmers market is you get face-to-face interaction, and then you get to see who comes back, right? So it's like week after week. People can love it in the moment, but are they willing to show back up and be like, I want this? And we were fortunate enough to have several of those people. But as the summer went on, I would have more and more conversations with them, and it would be like, Sam, I would always ask them like, okay, what's your favorite, like what drink are you making? Like, how are you using this? Trying to figure out what the mix was. And eventually I would break them down to the point where they were like, listen, I haven't known how to tell you this, but like, I don't drink tequila or alcohol at all. Like, this is something that I just drink on a Tuesday morning when I feel like I want something different than water. But I also bring it to the parties we go to, and I can share it with my friends that do drink, right? And is this thing where when I chose not to drink, I stopped having that bottle of wine to bring to the party, and you started having, you'd show up with a LaCroix or whatever it may be. And your product, like this Oslo Lime and Mint tequila mixer that we had at the moment, is the first thing that I was able to bring to a party and feel like I was a part of it again, like I was when I was drinking. So that was where I was like, that's super interesting. I want to like learn more about that and why. So I started having more of those conversations, and I started looking at myself. And this is like I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm starting to drink less. I'm starting to do it. And I'll get back to your initial question of like how I wake up at 4 a.m. because I know that's where we started. But I stopped drinking, not entirely, but just it was reduced a ton when I started running a business, because like I'm broke. So I don't have excess money to go pay for get drinks and stuff during the week and whatnot. It's all on me. And this is to go back to what you were talking about, like you becoming a worse athlete. Like I just know I operate at a lower capacity if I have been drinking.
Sure.
So I need to be at as high of a level as possible, as much as possible. So this is something that's going to need to be reduced. And all the while I'm pitching this like tequila mixer and myself as this like tequila connoisseur. And it just started feeling really inauthentic. And I got to the point where I'm like, I think we need to change this. Like, I think our customers are saying they're using it a different way. I myself am living a different way than this represents. Like, why not just adjust. And so that was kind of the first pivot, was to moving away from calling it a mixer, move away from any sort of like alcohol specific branding, and keeping it just more, it's an elixir. It's this thing that you can use to mix a drink with, or have it after a workout because there's electrolytes in it and everything. But that then got the ball rolling, because that move to just be an elixir was what I would say was I was trying to be everything to everyone. And that means I was nothing to anybody, right?
Sure.
And just kind of lost what I thought was going to unlock these new markets. Ended up being, we actually got less customers from our existing market, and we were struggling to break into the new one. And that's when it was like, okay, I think what needs to happen is we need to just firmly move into this new space where, like you mentioned, like our customers are, where I'm going to, which is wanting something that I can have that is delicious, interesting, like makes me feel like I'm a part of the social setting, but it's not something that's going to make me suffer the next day. And so that's when the decision to go into the non-alcoholic space. And then to actually answer the question of where the journaling came from, through this kind of evolution, I'm going through stuff myself, right? Like, so figuring out who I am, how I operate the best. And a couple friends of mine had recommended this book called The Artist's Way, which are you familiar with it at all?
Who wrote that?
It is Julia Cameron is the person who wrote it.
Okay.
But it's very popular in the author,
I was thinking
personal
of
development.
The War of Art. But
War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. I mean, I love that one too. So
That's like one of the most impactful books I've read.
man, I'm right now, one of the things I do is I read it's called The Daily Pressfield, and it just came out this year. So it's The War of Art, but broken out into 365 individual entries.
Wow.
It's amazing. War of Art's the best.
He has a way of explaining difficult concepts with the human language that I've never really seen anybody else be able to do so, at least to that level of succinctness.
Yeah.
He's able to like give you these bite-sized things where it's like, that's what I've been experiencing, but I never knew how to talk about it.
And he does it in 4 sentences.
And it's so quick, and so there's no big words in it. It's like, he's incredible. So highly recommend The War of Art. I actually think Stephen Pressfield might have been one of the people I heard on an interview talking about The Artist's Way. Okay, I'm gonna write this
but
down.
I'm a huge Tim Ferriss podcast fan.
Yeah, I like his pod too.
He this was like he asked people often, like, what's the book you gift most, and this is like one of the most commonly answered gifts, especially from authors and whatnot. But there are 2 kind of core tenets to it. The first one is this idea of an artist date. And I guess backing up, like the Artist's Way is a 12-step program modeled after Alcoholics Anonymous, but to kind of recover your blocked artist. So she believes that everyone is an artist at heart, and it's society, life, school, parents, whatever it may be, feed you these things that lead you to not believing you're an artist anymore and becoming blocked. And this is a 12-week program to uncover that. And the 2 core tenets is this artist date, which is once a week, go do something that like nourishes your inner artist. So it can be, painting and whatnot, or as simple as like I would go take myself to an Italian dinner and like eat really delicious pasta one night, or go to a comedy show, things to that effect. And then the other thing, which is the most important thing, is morning pages. And that's every day when you wake up, first thing in the morning, you write 3 pages, stream of consciousness. And I read that book like 2.5 years ago, and I started doing the morning pages, and it's just become the most impactful thing that I can do on a daily basis. And so I pretty much, I think for the last 2.5 years, every day I wake up and the first thing I do is write 3 pages. So whether it's at 4:30 in the morning or it's later in the day, if I'm sleeping in on a weekend, that is like without fail one of the things I need to do. And it has become the best form of therapy I've ever gone through, that I get to do with just myself and a piece of paper and a pen.
So walk me through how the morning looks on a normal day. You wake up pretty early, but it could be whenever.
Yep.
And what, you wake up, you take a pee, and then you just go to wherever your journal is?
Yeah, take a pee, brush my teeth, go downstairs, and set up and write. And it takes me about 20 minutes. Like, it's kind of, I'm pretty like, if I showed you my calendar, I'm pretty dialed in on my like how much time it takes. But yeah, I wake up at 4:25. I'm sitting down journaling at 4:32, like every day, because that's a 7-minute like
Transitional
to get there.
period, yeah.
And I'm done at 4:52, and then I out the door heading down to V23 to go get after it. I would say like that's about 80% of my days.
Yeah.
And then weekends I'll let myself sleep in. I've had 3 super hard workouts in a row, so I'm gonna not go to V23 tomorrow, and I'll like sleep in an hour and go for a run in the morning or whatever it may be. But that's pretty much what I try to do as much as possible.
I, for the life of me, cannot understand you psychopaths going there so early. Like, it does not compute.
I mean, your sister's another dimension of this, where she's waking up at 3:30 so she can get there at 4:15 to do an hour-long workout before I even show up. Which is,
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. Like, I'm not that interested. I respect it.
Yeah.
It looks dope on Instagram when you guys do it, but I just don't know how they do it. And another one is Rogloski. Like, when she stepped back obviously a little bit with her injury,
Yeah.
but like she used to do the run with Ben
Yep.
at like 3:30. They'd run in the dark in the winter. And then show up, do like 90 minutes of strength, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not even up yet. Like,
well, and I think this is great coming from the conversations we had about drinking, where it's like, I think, do you? Yeah, and the same. I think everybody, there is a genuine, like, our bodies operate best at different times, and it's specific to you. And it's weird. Like, I reflected on this recently, but I still remember being in like elementary school. And I was obsessed with watching like SportsCenter top 10 plays. Like, I needed to watch the top 10 before I went to school.
yeah.
And one day I missed it, and I was just like devastated. And I was like, it was like the entire day was ruined. And I remember I was complaining to it about my mom. And she's like, well, it comes on at the same time every day. Like, you could just like do it. And my mind was like, she wakes me up, and I go downstairs and SportsCenter's on. I'm like, I'm 11. Like, I don't know what's, or 9. And she was like, if you just wake up earlier, you can like make sure that you see it. And I was like, wait, what? And I remember I was like, what if I woke up like an hour earlier? Then I could watch the entire SportsCenter. Like, I could watch everything and the top 10 and then go to school. And it was just like, it clicked, and I did that from then on. And for me, it's always been like, I operate best in the morning. Like, I know my brain's on. I'm able to go, like, I have control over it. I think that's a huge thing for me. It's like I wake up, and I decide when I wake up, and I decide what I do first, and I decide how that goes. And then the world decides other things for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that things are thrown off. So I know I operate best when in the morning. So I try to do as much like focused work and things that I know I want to do in the day first thing. And then I'll do the things with, clearing out email or doing an interview or having a phone call in the afternoon. Because one, I know my energy dips. And if my energy is dipping, then I'm not going to be great just like grinding. I'm going to be great feeding off of somebody else's energy and doing something like that. And then by the night, I'm just useless. So I'll just like read a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, the 4:30 thing's new. It's honestly came about when I met Bo. And I meet Bo like October last year. And last year, I did like 75 hard, so I'm like in good shape, but I'm not to the level of I'm not doing the workouts that we're doing now. But I meet Bo at Eric Hinman's house because we go over to sauna, and I was about to go on this like retreat with Eric to Palm Springs to go hike Cactus to Clouds, which is super intense hike. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. For anyone wondering, it's a 10-mile hike where you get 8,000 feet of elevation gain across 10 miles. So it's pretty intense. And that
group was probably predictably unprepared.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No one knew what they were getting themselves into. But I remember I go over to Eric's place before that. I'm talking to Bo, and this is the first time I meet Bo. And I kind of share with him about what I'm doing on the drink side. And this is like right after we made like the full shift into non-alcoholic ready to drink. And Bo's like, I actually have this I always call it a TED Talk. I don't know how he would describe it, but he is this way that he talks about drinking where we do it to connect and disconnect, and it's often just like this mindless practice, but if we make it mindful, then that connection's stronger and we don't need to disconnect as frequently. And I was like, yeah, man, I vibe with that. So we decided to do an event together, go to V23 for the first time, working out with these people, and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here, but this is another level, and I want to be around it. Like, I want to extract as much as I can. And I asked Bo if I could go to a class, and he didn't respond for like 2 weeks or whatever it was. And then on one random Monday night, he's like, I got a spot for you at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll see you there. And I'm just like, I usually wake up at 5:30, but I can't say no to Bo. Like, I can't say no to this.
He's bigger than me.
Exactly. Like, he's gonna write me off forever. I'm gonna be this softy. But yeah, so I showed up at 5:30 the next day. I got my ass kicked, just got wrecked. But I was like, I kind of like that. And the same kind of thing where it's like, okay, I want to be around these people. I would love to. I'm on this journey to kind of become in better shape and really, like, I've been seeing it as like realize the potential of my body, of my mind. Like, that's kind of the journey that I'm on. And I think this place is going to help it. What do I need to do to make sure that happens? Like, how do I see the top 10 plays every day? I just wake up earlier. And it was a decision I made like November 1st last year, and it's kind of stayed consistent since then.
That's incredible. I think your point is very true that this is another one of those conversations that can be nuanced, and like not everyone needs to wake up at 4:30.
Yeah.
I've been doing for the last, I don't know, maybe 2 months. I've been training super hard and teaching a lot of wilderness courses and doing a lot of different stuff. So I actually adopted the no alarm policy, which is basically just like intuitive sleeping. And sometimes I still wake up early and I get up early, and sometimes like I'll sleep till 8:30 and my body's just like, that's what we needed.
Yeah.
And I've just been kind of rocking with that. But I mean, I've got to see Erin firsthand for years now. She used to drive down like an hour to teach a CrossFit class at like 4 a.m. and she would leave our house at like 3 or like 2:50. Like,
yeah.
And I could never. It would destroy my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, things would fall apart. I just wouldn't be. I would cry and throw temper tantrums, and there's no way I could do it. So it's always impressive to me when folks can manage that.
Well, and I think again, it's I admire your ability to not, or to do it differently, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, if I, like, on days where I sleep in, if I sleep till like 6:30, I sometimes get jolts of anxiety that I'm behind, right? Yeah. Because I'm so used to having accomplished so much by 6:30 that if I wake up at 6:30 and it wasn't like I chose to, like it just happened, then I'm derailed. And it's like, man, I wish that I could not need this regimented system. And I think that, I think we could both probably gain from extracting from the other person or taking from the other side. But it's just like, I know what makes me operate the best. So that's what I'm going to do. And what makes you operate the best. And clearly something's working. So, you're in France to compete in the High Rocks World Championship. So I don't think you necessarily have to wake up at 2:50 like Erin does in order to do that. There's both worlds can exist.
Yeah. Which she also competed in the High Rocks World Championship.
Exactly. I mean, you got to share some genes though. So it's whatever's in the water over there. I don't know.
I try to not to give her any credit as much as I can, because she's literally better than me at everything. So I try to reserve that. So tell me a little bit about this, the podcast. I know, you've had several of our friends on there and kind of working your way into the podcast sphere. What was the idea originally behind that? So the podcast came about mostly because I myself am just a podcast junkie. I mean, we've talked about several, of our favorite podcasters, and similar to, I think, everything we're talking about, the nuance, right? I found that the way that I take in information best is through podcast form. So I I became obsessed with podcasts through listening to sports podcasts, but it quickly became everything else. And I kind of started doing this thing where, like, if a book interested me, before I bought the book, I would listen to a podcast the author did and would see what things that they thought were the most important.
And did that capture my attention enough for me to want to go read about it? And I started getting into that thing. So that's what brought me to listening to Tim Ferriss, Ed Milet, all these more in the personal development kind of outside of the sports scene. And the whole time I'm just like, I kind of want to do one. As we talked about, started a business. It's pretty tough to like start multiple things at the exact same moment because you have no idea what you're doing, and I would have failed at too many things at the same time. So I would have just given up. So I chose to focus on the business, but I knew that the podcast was something I wanted to do, and I started meeting through running the drink company and getting to meet so many amazing people. I found myself in this kind of like creative entrepreneurial sphere of the Denver metro area. And I would have a lot of like coffee meetings with people where it'd be like, just tell me about your life. And actually like Aaron and I did this a few like months ago, just be like, I want to know so much more than just like what we do in this surface level interaction. Like, let's just talk. And I quickly found out too that like that's a little bit weird to do on a casual coffee meeting when you're trying to plan an event or something. So a great way to do it is sitting down at a podcast, and you have the excuse of like, we're recording this, we're going to share this somewhere. But really it's just a way for me to be able to like go super deep to understand and learn from other people. And I call the podcast What Made You Do It? And the idea behind it is like this world of entrepreneurs, artists, creatives, athletes, whomever, anyone that has chosen to go and pursue something that's kind of non-traditional. It's like, I want to hear your entire story and ultimately what got you to go all in on this. And I, fairly new, just this year is when it's been out, done like 16, 17 episodes. But I'm obsessed with it. And like, as much as it would be cool if it becomes to the level of a Tim Ferriss podcast, that would be amazing. But for me, it's just scratching my own itch of wanting to learn from other people and have an excuse to sit down with them and do that.
Yeah, it's the most amazing thing because you get to be selfish and just pick people that you want to talk to. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that kind of is a good KPI. Like it actually is going to do better if you do approach it that way, because everyone else also wants to learn those same things. You just have to kind of like follow your own intuition, and that'll allow the crowd to trust you as a host that this person is interesting. Right. 100%.
And that's I bring up Tim Ferriss again. Like, I've been introduced to so many people I never would have known about before. But because I admire Tim and I trust him to bring in people, I will blindly listen to somebody named like Suleika Jawad, who I'm sure you have never heard of. But she's this unbelievable human being who's an author, brought on to promote her book, that created this thing called the Isolation Journals in the pandemic. And it's like a weekly journal prompt. And she's overcome cancer twice.
Wow.
Ended up being like, I had no idea at the time too, but she's married to John Baptiste. So like very deep in the creative space. But just through trusting Tim and Tim's team doing a great job of sourcing people and him having a genuine interest in talking to her, now that person is a part of my life, and I like get to read her book and read her prompts every week and whatnot. So to double click on what you're saying, it's like, I think if I'm able to trust myself enough that the podcast will be fine, and just like lock in on wanting to learn from you and sitting down. And this is something I've been much more intentional about recently, but it's like, okay, what do I want to learn from this person? And craft questions to specifically extract that, instead of being like a little bit more rigid and like, how does somebody else run their podcast? It's like, no one's ever made something amazing by copying something else. Right. Like you just got to be authentic to you.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot through podcasting. I used to actually over-prepare for podcasts a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I would have my questions, and then I would sit there, and I'd wait for them to finish their answer, and I'd be like, check, and I'd go on to my next question. And, like, you get out of flow so quickly running a podcast like that. And so I've been very careful to have, like, guiding notes now of conversations. But I know for me and my listenership, it's much more about, like, a walk through the woods. It's not a bike path. Right? Like, we're kind of wandering through this conversation, and that's, I think, what listeners come here for. It's not this interview style. It's much more conversational.
Totally.
And you kind of have to be aware of where you sit in that scale.
100%. And I think what's really cool about that is like I'm much more chronological in the way that I ask questions, just because that's the way my brain works,
Yep.
and that's where I'll look for that. But I'll have listeners that are looking for that, and you have listeners that are looking for slightly different. And if it's both authentic to us, then that's amazing. That's all we can really look for.
Definitely. So in terms of your actual drink at this point, I'm curious because so the first time I had it, actually, Jacob had it in the fridge, and he's like, try this. And I had it. I was like, this is amazing. It was like 8:00 at night. It was cold out of the fridge, and I love like mint tea. So this just like absolutely hit me, and I was like, this is amazing. What is this? And he kind of told me the story a little bit, but I definitely said the name wrong until Aaron told me how to say it properly.
Yeah.
So what is Oslo, and where does the name come from? What does it have to do with the drink?
Yeah. So Oslo is a Spanish word. It's the command form of hacer. It means do it. And kind of like going back to earlier in the conversation where the initial idea was this kind of like tequila related beverage. So as I'm kicking around ideas for the drink, I'm kicking around ideas for the name of the company, I was just stumped. And like I think anyone that's tried to name anything before, it's like it can be either immediate or excruciating. And this one was not coming to me easy. So I was starting to like look at lists of words, and I'm like, what if I looked at Spanish words? Like, this is a tequila related product. Like, let's just kind of expand the scope of what I'm looking for. So I remember I was at the gym one day, and I would like my way of in between sets, I would like do a set, and then I would look for a word. And then when I would get annoyed that I wasn't finding a word, I would go back and do my next set. It was kind of like a built-in rest period. But one day I was like scrolling on my phone, and I just see the word Oslo, and I'm like, it took 10 years of Spanish. I'm not fluent, but I'm very conversational, and I'd never seen the word Oslo before. And I was like, what does that mean? I said, do it. And I got just full body chills across my body. And at this point, I was living in San Francisco still, hadn't moved back to Chicago, but it was kind of like in this internal debate every day of like, is this crazy? Like, am I just stupid? Like, should I just get over this? And that moment of seeing the word and feeling that across my body, it was like, this is a sign from whoever, this higher power that like, no, you need to go. Your path is supposed to follow this, and this is the name of what it's going to be. So that's where the name came from. And then as far as how it kind of represents the drink, I think for me, right, the way I've viewed this brand and kind of the evolution of the product it continues to become what my aspirational self would want. So at that time, it was something that was healthier, like an intentional thing to mix with the alcohol that I was drinking. And it has quickly become like a non-alcoholic drink for me to have so I can become the best version of myself every day and not be, burdened by being hungover or anything like that. And I think that for me represents this like idea of like a dreamer and a doer, where it's like I see this thing and I want to become this, and this product is what's going to help me get there, and I want to provide that for as many people as possible. And whether with the nuance again, whether that's you never drinking and this is the thing that you get to have instead of alcohol, amazing. If this is what you're choosing to do, you're closer to the beginning of my path and you just want something a little bit healthier to add into whatever it is you're drinking, also amazing. But to help you kind of like get closer to that aspirational self of that you have in your brain.
One thing that you reference a lot is kind of this like pulling, this tugging that you felt internally when you hadn't yet really developed the brand pre-May 19th, 2018, but you knew there was something there. How did you battle with the struggle of listening to your intuition versus listening to maybe what looks like apparent logic?
Yeah. It's a constant battle. Something that I still struggle with every day. But I think for me, what allowed me to have more of a conversation as opposed to just muting that was choosing to leave my first job. And so the first job I had out of school, I worked for Ernst & Young, was in their like consulting advisory program, was, EY had just been rated the #1 place for a recent college grad to work. Like, I was making more money than all of my friends that had just graduated. And I remember like my parents having so much pride sharing with other people that that's where I was working. And I was miserable. Like the most prolonged depression of my life was when I would have to be traveling to another Citibank campus and sit in a windowless room and look at just spreadsheets. And that was what I did every day. I would have to fly out on Sunday because I had to be there Monday morning, and I wouldn't be able to leave until Friday afternoon. I would get back to Chicago and I would booze all weekend long until I got back on that plane on Sunday. And it was just, life was on repeat like that. And I remember, I was 22, like I knew nothing. But I knew that whatever was happening was not good. Like I needed to be different, things to be different. And I go to San Francisco one weekend to visit a friend. So I get transferred to the project in LA. And instead of flying back to Chicago to do the same thing again, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to fly an hour instead, go to San Francisco, see a friend, and just kind of like break this cycle a little bit. And I remember that weekend, it was like I saw light again for the first time. Like I just was like in San Francisco. And if anyone's been to the Bay Area, and especially like with somebody who lives there and takes you to, not the Embarcadero and not, where the madness is, but like the nooks and crannies of San Francisco, it's amazing. Like it's a incredible place that I still love. But I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I want this. Like, this is darkness. These windowless rooms are darkness. I need to be in this light. And I ended up having a conversation with another friend whose cousin happened to work for a software company in San Francisco. So I'm kind of like, okay, cool. I'll talk to him. He introduced me to someone. I had gone through this interview process. And before I know it, like I have a job offer. And they're like, we need you here in a month. And this whole time, I'm still living in Chicago. I've not told anyone other than my friend, like a couple of my friends, that I'm even exploring leaving this thing. But I still remember distinctly, it was my birthday's in April, and I'm back in Chicago for my 23rd birthday. My family's taking me out to brunch, and I've just decided that I'm going to go take this job. Like, I don't know why, like I just need to, like darkness to light, right? And I go to this like birthday brunch. And I'm like, hey guys, I think you guys know I'm not super happy with my company right now, or my job. Like, this is, I think I might need to make a change. And instantly I'm just met with like, that's a stupid idea. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is you're at EY, man. Like, this is the best. Like, what do you like? And I just get shut down. And I'm like, okay, all right. And you get a little bit more liquid courage throughout the brunch. Yeah, a couple Bloody Marys. Yeah, so I could bring it up again. I'm like, I actually found this like company. They seem great. It's actually really cool. Like, do you want to see the website? And instantly met again with like, that's a dumb idea. And it's really like my dad and one of my two sisters were like pretty firmly in the camp of like, you've got it good, dude. Don't rock the boat. And my mom and my other sister started to soften a little bit. But finally, after a little bit more liquid courage, I was like, all right, guys, there's a company in San Francisco. I got a job. I accepted it. We can either sit here and tell me how stupid I am, or we can figure out how I'm going to make this work. And that, like, quiet, like nobody, pin drop type of quiet silence. And I end up doing it. Go there. It's not the most seamless transition, but it ends up working. And I remember my parents came out to visit like 3 months after I'd lived there. I'm walking around with them, and my dad, who had been like pretty against the move, I just remember we're walking around San Francisco. He turns around. He's like, I get it. Like, I see what you saw, and I understand like why you needed to make this change. And that was probably the first time in my life where like I had gone completely against what society, life, people that I admire and respect thought I should do, and just did what felt right to me. And that stuck with me. So when I'm at this, at the gym, and I see this thing, even though I know that if I were to poll everyone, I doubt that they would say that this is what I should be doing, but I feel it. This is the feeling I had when I was in San Francisco. So it's this kind of an empathic thing that I started to notice more and kind of follow a little bit truer.
You definitely have the gift of courage, and I think it sounds like it's it's a positive feedback loop, because there's times where you've let that out, it seems that you've been rewarded. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the Tim Ferriss podcast. Tim Ferriss, one of the reasons I respect him so much, he is the only person to get my favorite philosopher on multiple times, Naval Ravikant. I'm sure you've heard.
Love him.
All of us. Like, I mean, he's probably my favorite modern day thinker. But he won't do he won't do podcast period, but he hates reruns. He has the famous saying, anything I say that's already been said better, basically. Like, I'm not going to repeat myself. I don't want to do reruns. And one thing he says is, if you want to make the wrong decision, ask everybody.
Yeah.
And the more times I think about it, the more true it becomes. And so that's why when I think about making decisions, I try and choose wise counsel, and like a very small group, maybe one person, maybe 2 or 3, depending on how big the decision is. But being careful about whose thoughts you let into your mind when you're going through life-altering decisions like that is so important.
Totally. I do something very similar, and I've even gotten to the point where, like, I ask for input on a specific part of the decision, as opposed to leaving it open-ended and letting them kind of fill in the gaps of what they would do and project that on me. But it'd be like, hey, here's this holistic thing. What would you do about this? And
one piece of it.
And but Naval, it's funny you say Naval. That was
Naval Ravikant is who we're talking about, by the way.
Yeah, he it was October 2020. I'm big with dates. Dates stick with me for some reason. But I remember I had COVID, was on lockdown, and it was the same week that like an episode of Tim and Naval came out. So I listened to the episode, and Naval talked about these different forms of meditation that he was doing.
Yeah.
And one of which was just like sitting in a dark room for an hour, like eyes closed for an hour. And I remember being like, if there's ever a time I needed an hour to go away, it'd be right now when I can't leave this room. So like, I'm just going to try it. And it was in the first 3 days of that where Denver came to me as like, this is the place I need to go. And it was the week after that period that I listened to that podcast that I came to visit Denver and like vetted it out as a city. So Naval's got a special place in my heart.
Yeah. He does a great job talking about meditation, because he also points out the bullshit of like how most of it is just fake virtue signaling that people don't actually do.
Yeah.
And he's just so honest about how hard it is to actually meditate, but also the important benefits that come with it.
Yeah.
There's a saying that I love, which is, I think it might have been Rick Rubin who said it, but he's like, if you can't meditate for 30 minutes, you need 3 hours. And I'm like, dang, that one really hit. Because I do an 11-minute meditation. I did it probably 300 days last year. So I do it almost every day. And it's 11 minutes. And sometimes I'm like, I do it in the morning. And I'm like, I don't have time right now. And then I think, if I can't do 11 minutes, I need 2 hours.
Yep.
So I just need to sit down and get my 11 minutes in real quick. And just the things that come out of it, like, it's the clearest moment of my day.
Totally.
Sometimes I'm able to fall into nothingness, and that's great, and I love when that happens. Sometimes, very clearly, I'm able to see what I'm supposed to do that day, and I'm like, okay, I don't really want to think about the tasks, but that was super clear, and I know exactly what I need to get done today. Or if I need to just like go off into the wilderness, and that will come out during those 11 minutes very clearly. It's just, it's so much easier to feel what is real during that time.
I think that's honestly really like remarkable that you're able to do that in an 11-minute like span every morning too. And honestly, morning pages is that for me.
It's very
similar. Like very similar, where it's just like the moment where the distractions are gone, and it's like, what is going on here? And I think what I used to, I was in San Francisco, peak of the software, when like Calm and Headspace and all these different apps were coming out. And so I think I would do those guided meditations, and I would leave it every time thinking I did it wrong, like every time, no matter what. And I think what the unlock for when I heard Naval talk about it, where it's like the goal isn't necessarily to think about nothing. Like, sure, you want to get to a point of like tranquility, but like if there's stuff in your brain, it's there for a reason. Like you gotta think about it. You gotta categorize it. And he talks about like organizing your thoughts in filing cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why an hour was great is because like typically for 40 minutes, you're just organizing the file cabinets. But maybe after letting that happen for 40 minutes, you'll have 10 to 20 minutes of like peace.
Yeah.
And that was the first time where I was like, okay, maybe I'm not doing it wrong. Maybe it's just like I'm expecting to be at the end when I need to be at the beginning. And yeah, it's my daily practice of the journaling is like the biggest decisions of my life happen in that moment. But it doesn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It's just like, oh, I know this is what's supposed to happen. This has shown up for days now. Like I'm now thinking about the same stuff that I've been thinking about. You got to go do that thing. And yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
I want to be good at the journaling thing. Like I wish it came more naturally to me. My mom is very good at it, like doing morning pages, and I see so much benefit in it, but it's like, I don't know, it just has never come naturally to me. I wake up and I like usually go outside, walk around barefoot, feed the chickens, and get my morning started like outside, and that's big for me, and it feels great, and I love that vibe. But I think the morning pages would be good for me, so maybe I'll start working on it.
I think if there's a theme of this podcast, it's that nuance is essential, man. And like what I think you feel after feeding your chickens with your feet in the grass is what I feel when I finish my morning pages.
Yeah.
And I don't do morning pages for any other reason than try to get that feeling. So try it, of course. We should try everything, but like if it doesn't work, I think I'm not too worried about you, but keep feeding chickens barefoot, man. Like that's your morning pages. And I think because it's amazing, and I recommend it to everyone. But I do it because I got a lot of shit going on up here that I need to figure out and sort through, and this has become the best modality for me to do that.
Is that the book you use?
I have 2 journals. So I have
was gonna say those are fat pages.
Yeah,
son.
no, I wouldn't sign up for that. That'd be
fat pages.
That'd be
son.
a 45-minute thing. No, so I'm weird. I have two journals. So this is my note-taking journal. So I usually every day at the top of it, I write like today's purpose. And so I have the second journal that I'm writing in. And if any like key theme shows up, I'll write it up here. And then at the end of it, I'll kind of like sit and reflect for a second and be like, if I had to distill this down into one theme, like this purpose of today, and I write it at the top.
Gotcha.
But then this is like what I'll bring out for meetings, and I'll write stuff in, and I usually do some sort of like recap of like what are the best, like 5-minute journal exercise, which is like 3 amazing things that happened today. You know, what am I grateful for? Stuff like that. But the other journal's much smaller. It's a much more attainable 3 pages.
Yeah. So in terms of Oslo, what's next? I know you guys got the new can, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
And I love the mint and lime logo. But what's next in terms of like the business?
So I appreciate the kind words about the packaging. I'm very excited about that. The next piece is we're actually going to be coming out with 2 new flavors in the next month to 6 weeks.
Exclusive,
exactly. Yeah, this might be our promo episode for that. But yeah, we've the lime and mint, and this is a story we might have to get to another time, but like this formula came from a very serendipitous meeting with a James Beard award-winning mixologist who created our original formula. This is the one flavor we've had over the course of this entire journey.
It's amazing.
And yeah, I think it's really, really great, and will always be the OG, the original flavor. But as we're expanding into more retail spots and a lot of different spaces, they basically mandate you having 3 SKUs and 3 different flavors.
Got it.
So we are keeping the same core, so the same type of like steeped beverage with the ginseng and the magnesium and kind of everything that's that I believe is very transferable and great about this product. And then we're pairing it with a couple other flavors. So one's going to be a lavender and lemongrass, and then the other's going to be a lemon, holy basil, and sea salt. Both are delicious. Like the lemon and holy basil just tastes like Gatorade. It's phenomenal. And then the lavender and lemongrass is going to be, it's the way that I've been describing it is just delightful. Like it's just, you get the aroma of lavender while you're drinking, and just it's really, really nice. So I think we took the best parts about it, and we just kind of created a couple different ways to do it. But those are going to be coming out soon. We are really starting to have like a big, I guess like the two spaces that we've had the most success are the health, wellness, fitness community, you know, how we're connected, and then the music community. So Mission Ballroom right now is like our biggest customer, best account.
Wow.
And they're owned by a company called AEG, and they have 47 locations nationwide. We are expanding into 2 more of their locations this
Amazing.
summer. So keep an eye out for us at Fiddler's Green. That's our next one that they're going to launch us in.
Sweet.
But
That's
yes,
a really dope, popular venue.
I'm excited. Yeah, like Mission's been incredible. Fiddler's is like 4 times the size of Mission, so just is an opportunity to get in front of a lot of people. In summertime, when it's, you know, going to be hot, people want something delicious to drink. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, man, I mean, I love the way we started this conversation, kind of like talking about the nuance of alcohol, because that's kind of where I see this product and this brand really being able to kind of like put a stake in the ground. And I really want, we're trying to present ourselves as what athletic brewing is to beer, we want to be to hard seltzer, where we're not trying to make you replicate the feeling of being drunk. We're not trying to give you these different substances. We're trying to give you something that's really delicious, that makes you feel good, both in what's in it, but also about the decision you're making, if whatever decision that may be. And the next 6 months is going to be about like how quickly can we establish that foothold that we've started to get.
Interestingly enough, I was just trying to reflect on how do I drink it, and I don't drink it as an alcohol replacement.
Yeah.
I drink it as a soda-like replacement.
Cool.
Like I think of it more, and I don't drink soda, so maybe that's not the best thing, but it's like when I want something sweet and delicious, I'm not going to drink alcohol during the weeknight, so it's not really on my mind. I'm not comparing those two.
Yeah.
But I might get something more sugary or something more processed versus like an Oslo. And it's like, what do I want to have with my dinner or after dinner that's nice and sweet and just like relaxing?
Yeah. It's just the celebratory beverage.
Yeah, just something nice to drink at nighttime and chill out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great feedback. I appreciate you giving me that anecdote. Because yeah, that's another piece, and I think we do have a ton of customers that just drink it throughout the day or even in the morning, you know.
Tastes good.
It just tastes, yeah, exactly.
Tastes good.
Just whenever you want something that tastes good, that's not water. And I think that's powerful. And yeah, we got some more work to do, is what I'm saying, to figure out the needle in the haystack.
What are the benefits in terms of like the health benefits that come from drinking Oslo? I guess specifically this lime and mint. I'm sure it changes depending on which one you're drinking, because different plants have different nutrients to offer. But this one specifically, what's the health benefits?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be the way that I describe it is like it's almost like an anti-anxiety pill, where the main like active ingredients in it. So ginseng is a remarkable ingredient. It is an adaptogen, and like adaptogens kind of as a category are just different substances that help your body adapt to stress. So if you're feeling tired, it gives you energy. If you're feeling stressed, it helps you relax. And so it's this really like multifaceted ingredient that is very prominent in our drinks. And so that's why some people talk about feeling like a little bit jolt of energy. And that's the ginseng. But I also have friends like, you know, my friends that do drink and they have it in the morning if they're feeling a little hungover, like it chills them out a little bit too. So ginseng is something that you're going to feel a lot. Ginkgo biloba is another ingredient that's in there. And ginkgo is like an antioxidant and adaptogen all in one. And so the adaptogen piece is all about mental clarity and focus. So it is almost like a replicant of a caffeine, not from the energy, but from like being able to lock in on a task. So you kind of like are able to hone in and just feel more present. So not jittery, but like present at where you're at, and then a little bit more clear. So that's the ginkgo aspect. And then magnesium, and magnesium glycinate is the specific magnesium we use. And that's great for just like overall relaxation, and that's kind of one of the neutralizing pieces within it. If you get a little bit too jacked up from the ginseng, it'll bring you down, or if you're too locked in on the ginkgo, it'll kind of mellow you out. And then for this one, we use both wintergreen and spearmint, and those are like dried mint, and mint in general is just a great antioxidant, which just helps your body kind of like cleanse itself of all the bad stuff that's within it.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I think of it as like a peaceful drink.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me kind of just like baselined. Like after a long day, sit down, have one of those, I'm just chilling.
Yeah.
And that's the vibe I have with it. When I think about Oslo, that's kind of my relationship with it.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to hear your ad reads for it later on, man. It's gonna
Yeah, I'm excited to do those. It'll be fun. It's great that we live close to each other. We get to work together. We get to develop all these projects, and it's cool to be a part of it at this stage. Like it'd be great if you were like, if you were already Tim Ferriss and you had a drink company, but it's cooler to see it from this spot and already just see all the things you're moving and the different projects you've got going, like the new can and the new flavors. That's the exciting stuff that I like to see from, I don't know, my friends and all the stuff they're doing.
Totally. And that's, to bring us back to the podcast piece and like why I wanted to make one is like, I think the Tim Ferriss stuff's amazing, but those are all people being interviewed after they've accomplished these grandiose things.
Yes.
And my podcast and this conversation is an opportunity to sit down with people that are in it, that are figuring it out. And I think, like, from my perspective, there's so much to learn from people already, just from the sheer act of choosing to go pursue something. But also, to your point, it's like now we get to follow along. Now I get to go see what this becomes and be a part of the journey.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that like there's so few podcasts about building it while it's being built.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are like already past.
Totally.
Because there is a lot of cool things. I just had a guy named Rish on. I don't know if you know Rish, but he started Urge Juice. It's a juice company.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard of that.
And I've gotten a lot of people that have like reached out and really been impacted by his story. I mean, it was heavy. Like he was crying. I was kind of like getting teary-eyed. It was a heavy podcast, but he is now building this juice company, and it was very cool to also see him like going through. He's had a bunch of building moments like yourself, got the corporate success, and then had to deal with like the extreme depression. Like once you get to the top of the mountain and you realize this isn't the mountain that you wanted to be on,
Totally.
And you're like, shit, like what am I supposed to do now? And I think a theme from this podcast is a lot of times it comes back to inner work, working with the darkness, and health and fitness. And those two things seem to generally lead people down a more fulfilling path.
Totally.
So I think this is going to be great. I think you guys are going to crush it. For people that are interested in trying it, where can they get it?
Procure it. Yeah. So we right now we're expanding into retail, but the best place is just to go to our website. And then,
Gotcha.
So drinkoslo.com, and Oslo is spelled Hazlo. And then on the socials, we're Drink Oslo everywhere. So TikTok, Instagram, all those good things. And then, once we have the three flavors, we will be in traditional retail. So your typical natural grocers, Sprouts, and places like that. But until then, look for us at all your favorite music venues, and to soon to come elsewhere.
Sweet. And your Instagram is Mr. Oslo?
Mr. _ Oslo.
Mr. _ Did you know that Oslo means to do it?
I did. Yeah, man. I've actually the Instagram handle came about like literally last year. So it's a fairly new. My last name's Moore, so it's like my friends call me S'mores growing up, and so my Instagram handle used to be do _ s'more, and then just kind of off the do it play. But Mr. Oslo seems to work. I feel like
Mr. Oslo.
People would call me Mr. Oslo just like randomly if they were like introducing me to their friend or something. I'm like, okay, we should just embrace this on the Instagram too.
Or you just change your last name.
I could.
Sam Oslo.
Well, the amount of people that think my last name is Oslo is kind of, I mean, and I don't blame them at all. But
it's a cool name though.
It'd be way,
Oslo's cool.
Mom and Dad, I don't mean it. It's not way cooler than our name. Our name's great, but Oslo is a much cooler word than more.
It sounds more exotic for sure.
Totally.
All right, man. Well, this was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to everything that Oslo and you have coming in the future.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
It was great. Till next time, stay wild.